Now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can stream DirecTV satellite-free.
These humans can stream all the top-rated national news channels on DirecTV, and now with no satellite dish.
This just in. Weather, sports, election coverage. DirecTV has it all, but something is missing. The satellite dish.
What are you doing?
I'm reporting the news. Back to you, Bob.
Here's some news. You're a buffoon.
Stream the top-rated national news channels. No satellite dish. Visit DirecTV.com. Internet required. Top-rated news based on 2023 Nielsen ratings.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm your host, Steven Toplis. It's Friday the 25th of October, and that means once again it's time for your Friday 5. The weekend is almost upon us, and some would say within spitting distance. And Forest are back in action tonight away at Leicester. But before then, we've got some stories to bring you from the City Ground this week, our top 5, and returning to this week's podcast and bringing us the top Forest stories of the week, it's Jamie Martin.
Hi, this is Jamie Martin here with this week's top 5 Forest stories from the 1865 news desk. The first piece of news this week, Nottingham Forest have received the information from the FA that has informed them of bans for Nuno, Gibbs-White and Evangelos Marinakis. Last weekend, news broke that Nottingham Forest head coach, star player and owner had received bans from the FA following various misconduct cases, deeming all three to have been acting improperly. In the case of Nuno Espirito Santo, the manager is said to have used expletives, for which we cannot mention, against referee Rob Jones after he gave Morgan Gibbs-White a second yellow card for a challenge on João Pedro in Forest's away fixture against Brighton. He insinuated that Rob Jones had committed another poor decision against Forest, referencing the previous double yellow carding of Bolly at home, but in the words of the FA, they were deemed inappropriate. He now serves a 3-match ban with 2 games left. Morgan Gibbs-White received a standard 1-game ban for a double yellow card offence. However, his ban was extended following the language allegedly used against the referee after the incident. Gibbs-White is cleared to return against Leicester, however it will depend on his fitness after a recent injury. Evangelos Marinakis has also been given a ban, this one the largest, 5 games banned from stadiums, as according to the FA he spat near the foot of referees after a previous match, with the FA deeming it serious misconduct. Mr Marinakis' representative said that in his defence, he is a smoker of cigars, also had a bad cough and therefore coughed to the floor, unaware that any liquid had left his mouth. The club confirmed an appeal would be lodged, but the ban is being served nonetheless. Mr Marinakis was not present at Forest's win against Crystal Palace on Monday night. Now the second piece of news this week, huge fine given to Forest following a social media post. In another piece of frustrating news for fans and all stakeholders of Nottingham Forest Football Club, the club were given a £750,000 fine by the FA relating to the infamous tweet following Forest's loss to Everton last season. In the tweet, which still exists and Forest refused to delete, the club wrote, 3 extremely poor decisions, 3 penalties not given, which we simply cannot accept. We warned the PGMOL that the VAR is a Luton fan, Stuart Atwell it's referring to, before the game, but they didn't change it. Our patience has been tested multiple times. NFFC will now consider its options. A strong-worded statement, with the FA obviously not reacting very well to it, giving a £750,000 fine. The FA, though, have come under criticism from fans across the football community and indeed Forest, as despite the message format being perhaps inappropriate, the sentiment having a huge point. Are refereeing standards where they should be in the country and in the Premier League right now? Third piece of news, Chris Wood officially a Nottingham Forest Premier League legend. The word legend is thrown about too much, I would say, but it should be reserved for those who do profound things in life and in football for their clubs. Chris Wood has done exactly that and enters himself into Forest history. In the 90s, Forest saw European football, the retirement of Brian Clough, relegation, promotion, top six football and some fantastic goal scorers. Brian Roy and Stan Collymore, the most notable, both with 20 plus goals in the Premier League era. Now Chris Wood becomes the third player ever for Forest to score 20 plus goals in the Premier League. Brian Roy has 24, meaning Chris Wood could become the club's all-time Premier League goal scorer if he scores another 5 goals, or he could equal it with another 4. To add to this, Wood celebrated, insinuating that his partner was pregnant, pointing into the stands with a ball under his shirt. He has now revealed that his partner will give birth in the next 6 months to a baby girl. We wish Chris and his partner Emma congratulations following the announcement. And the fourth piece of news is a bit of player information. Elliott Anderson shines in absence of Morgan Gibbs-White. Since arriving at Nottingham Forest as part of a potentially £35 million deal from Newcastle United in the summer, Anderson has continued to progress, growing game by game into the players the Toons fans raved about. On Monday night in Forest win against Crystal Palace, Anderson showcased incredible footwork on multiple occasions, running through Palace's midfield and defence as if they were mannequins on the training ground, but not having enough stretch to finish them off. Anderson replaced the injured/suspended Gibbs-White and did so with incredible maturity and calmness. Even with Sangare and Danilo out, Forest have a plethora of quality midfield options. And now finally, some more positive news for fans of Nottingham Forest. Forest have announced an open training session. This week, for the first time under Nuno Espirito Santo, Nottingham Forest announced that the City Ground would host an open training session. In a ballot system for members and season ticket holders, the club are offering the chance to watch Forest train on the 29th of October and first-hand view the work that is often done at the training ground, but this time in public. A fantastic opportunity for those that can view it and an interesting insight into the daily work of Nuno, his staff and the players. That is the latest though from the 1865 News Desk. I'm Jamie Martin. Be sure to catch up with me on Twitter, or X as it's now known, via @I'mJamieMartin. Updates on Nottingham Forest related news throughout the week. Take care and we'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, Jamie, and good to have you back with us on Friday 5. Also joining me for this week's edition is the Maradona of the Midlands. We're back here again, and we're going to have a look at some of these stories in more detail. And we're going to start with the news that not only has Nuno Espirito Santo been issued with a ban, so too Morgan Gibbs-White, and perhaps most notably, Forest owner Evangelos Marinakis, who has been hit with a 5-match stadium ban for spitting on the floor as match officials walked past him in the tunnel, according to an independent regulatory commission. Marinakis was found guilty of improper conduct for the incident that happened after Forest's 1-0 Premier League defeat by Fulham at the City Ground at the end of September. It's a story which I think has garnered quite a lot of attention, as I can see you there coughing away, Maradona, in solidarity with our owner.
I just had to clear my throat a little bit. I must give up those cigars. I really must.
But what was your reaction to this story when it broke earlier in the week?
Well, let's start off with the least harsh, the most harsh. So Morgan Gibbs-White, I think, is a bit harshly done there. I don't think he said anything too bad. I had my old lip reading glasses on that day, and he would just say, I got the ball quite often to the ref. So seeing as he had sort of been sent off, I think players get sent off quite often and have a similar reaction. They don't end up getting banned. So I think he was very unlucky in that respect. Similarly, Nuno seems a bit harsh. He did drop the F-bomb, but a 3-game ban seems harsh on the face of it. But then apparently it's to do with the previous infringement he had from last season from the Everton game. So it's a cumulative effect. So you can maybe understand why they've had to go to 3 games now. But again, plenty of managers get away with sort of effing and jeffing towards the referee and don't get any touchline bans. So maybe a little bit harsh there. The Marinakis one, I don't know. On the face of it, it seems harsh. But before the news of the spitting came out, and then after that, yes, well, it's pretty well justified. You don't expect the owner of a club to behave in that way, whether it's accidental or on purpose. The referees obviously took it as being an intentional act, and it's a very unpleasant thing to happen. Nobody likes seeing spitting. It's disgusting when you see it out on the street, and to happen in that sort of environment at the highest level of football in this country, it's poor. It's poor, really. And a man in his position should know better. He shouldn't be down in the tunnel. First of all, after a game, if he's not there, none of this happens.
He argues that he was simply disposing of phlegm that was caused by his cigar habit, and it was unintentional.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, please stop smoking, Mr. Marinakis. You don't need it. It's really bad for you. Come on, you've seen the warning. Yeah. Secondly, a man of that much money, that means and that much money, surely he can afford a spittoon like the old guys in the Wild West or American baseball players. He'd have a nice. If I remember correctly, his dad used to make church bells. So he'll have a foundry in the family somewhere. He can knock up his own little spittoon, personalised spittoon, and failing that, a nice monogrammed hanky to spit it into there. What is it? He loves a monogrammed shirt. I'm so sure whoever's done his monogrammed shirts can do a nice little monogrammed hanky for him. We all know what's again for Christmas now, anyway. So spit it into there. You don't go around. It's like the pandemic never happened. Has he never heard of COVID? You can't chip Mr. Marinakis. You don't just let it go wherever. It's even if it was an accident, it's unpleasant. Something like that happens to me in my real life. I say, hey, dude, ask for the news, not the weather. And it's not nice. It's not nice having that sort of near your feet. I don't know. I have heard that Bob Cowcheese is very excited about the news, though. Yeah, this isn't a joke. He had to retire from doing his double act with Spit the dog because he got carpal tunnel syndrome. He found it very difficult to operate the puppet. Imagine the team they could make now. Marinakis doesn't even need to be operated. He could just learn to spit on demand. Hey, yeah. It'd be a whole new career boost for Bob Cowcheese.
Failing that, we've got a new mascot, haven't we? Welcome to the club, Spit the dog. But Marinakis' account of this is something else, and I urge you to go and have a read of it if you haven't. I mean, it's not exactly the most pleasant subject matter, but the storytelling is incredible. As the officials approached, he felt a cough coming, and he coughed on the floor, down and to his right, which was away from the path the officials were taking. He did not speak to the officials. He cannot now remember if any spittle left his mouth, but if it did, it certainly wasn't aimed at the referee's feet and it didn't hit anybody. He fails to see how coughing, where spit or phlegm can come out from any person, towards the floor in a relatively crowded tunnel is misconduct. Now, there's two things there. Spitting, first of all, is disgusting. I hate to see it when people do it in public. Spitting in your own stadium is another. You're just making a mess of your own stadium and your own property.
Yeah, I mean, that story, did the dog also eat his homework at the same time? I mean, we've got to take his word for it. It was all accidental. It didn't mean to happen. But it doesn't explain the fact why he was down there. I said this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. None of these things would be happening if he wasn't down on the pitch. No other owner or chairman is ever down there in this country. You never see anybody else. The only one I can remember, I mean, racking my brain, is another wacky figure was Sam Hammam in his days at Wimbledon and Cardiff. self-styled characters do this sort of thing. It's just attention grabbing, attention seeking. There's no need for him to be there. If he's not there, none of this happens. There's plenty of other spaces for him to be during a match day. He should be up in the boardroom, entertaining the guests from the other club. He could be in his own little private suite doing whatever they're doing there. There's no need for him to be down in the tunnel. The only reason for him to be there is to act in an intimidatory way to the officials. And I think that's part of the reason why he's got such a heavy ban. The FA or the Premier League, whoever's done this, will be aware of his reputation in Greece and what happens in Greece and the sort of rumours and things and just the actual sort of intimidation that can happen of referees on the pitch. We've all seen those pictures and images of owners and chairmen running onto the pitch. There was the incident of one of the owners going onto the pitch with a gun. And I think just part of the reason for the severity of it is just to clamp down on him and say, nip it in the bud, nip this sort of behaviour in the bud. They don't want the Premier League to descend to that sort of level or that sort of intimidatory behaviour towards officials. He shouldn't be there. There's no other reason for him to be there apart from to intimidate them. If you're unhappy, we're all unhappy. I went home unhappy that day. I stayed in a traffic jam an hour later trying to get home. And it was a horrible, miserable day. But, just stay in your lane, as they say these days. And I don't know.
I feel like we say this every week, but hopefully Marinakis can learn from this. But I think we all know what's going to happen, and there'll be something else along in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll be going round again in circles.
Yeah.
Let's go on to our next story, which again involves disciplinary action. This time the fine handed out to Forest by the FA for the social media post that they published in the aftermath of the loss at Everton at the back end of last season. The club fined £750,000 for the tweet. Now, we've discussed at length the fine itself and the proportion of the fine compared to other punishments that get handed out in football. It creates another question as well around whether refereeing standards are good enough, and perhaps Forest's tweet on the day, even though it was ill-advised, maybe it did shine a light on the standard of refereeing in this country, and the support that Forest got from supporters of other clubs might well suggest that. But again, it comes back to discipline and professionalism, and this was another example of hot-headedness coming to the fore, and Forest paying the price for it.
Yeah, it was completely unprofessional. There was a way. Forest had a genuine complaint that day, but that was lost. That was lost by the way they expressed it, and it was really the severity of the fine. Although it shocked me initially, it is there because they questioned the integrity of the officials and thereby the English game. The Premier League cannot have their product sullied in that way. They cannot have their reputation harmed in that way, because it's worth billions of pounds a year to them. If there's any question that it's all fixed in any way or there's some sort of bias involved, people around the world aren't going to pay the big bucks for the TV rights. So I think that the level of the fine was an indication of how seriously they took the tweet, and also it's because Forest showed absolutely no contrition in it. Apparently, the tweet's still up there. They haven't deleted it. You might not want to do it, but if you want to avoid sanctions, you have to play the game. You have to show a bit of contrition, and even if you don't really mean it, you say yes, we're very sorry, we deleted it, and you get away with it just to show a level of arrogance where we're not going to do it. It's just brought trouble onto themselves again. It's just naive behaviour again. It's I don't know. It seems so. It makes sense to me. You delete it, you move on, you say we're sorry, and you try and avoid it. Just trying to show this sort of strength to the FA is not going to work with the Premier League. It's not going to work because they've got all the power.
And Forest have created a rod for their own back, haven't they? And I'm not saying that their complaints haven't been justified over the last, 18 months or so. But Forest have made themselves a target, and I think even with the previous story, the bans that were handed out to Nuno, Morgan Gibbs-White, and to a certain degree of Angelos Marinakis, it's a symptom of the club's card being marked. That the FA are more than aware of them now, and I don't think they're going to hold back in, and the Premier League, I don't think they're going to hold back in punishing Forest when they step out of line.
Well, I mean, the problem is they keep on doing it, and every time they do it, the sanction's going to get worse and worse. It's not like it's for a one-off thing. If they keep on sort of doing these silly things, it's inviting trouble. There's no need. Just need to keep their noses clean for a period of 6 months, 2 years, just to let everybody else forget about what's happened in the past. But I don't know. I don't know if they'll do that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's in the nature of the club and the owners at the moment to just live the quiet life and shy away from the limelight. There's this whole sort of, they seem to be reveling in this whole reputation of being the rebel club from the rebel city, which I find a bit cringeworthy, to be honest with you. We're not really rebelling against anything. When we've been punished for some of the things like the ban, like the FFP thing, we actually broke the rules. It wasn't being particularly rebellious, and sort of and the fans booing the Premier League anthem and so on. I don't know. I'm not sure if it shows in a great light, and I don't know. I think that there were punishments there because we broke the rules, and we could have made it easier for ourselves, and we haven't done that.
Let's move on to some more positive news, and it involves Forest striker Chris Wood. He has now passed the landmark of 20 goals for Forest in the Premier League. Only 2 players have reached that milestone before him, both in the 90s, and both of them played together in the same team, Brian Roy and Stan Collymore. Roy is top of the Forest Premier League goal scorers list with 24. Chris Wood has 20. If he scores another 5, he becomes Forest's all-time Premier League top goal scorer. And it's great to see him hit a milestone. Obviously, the target of 20 is more down to Forest not being in the Premier League for the vast majority of its history when you look back now. But nevertheless, Chris Wood has been in great form, particularly since Nuno arrived. And he's coming up now for a 1 in 2 strike rate, which is fantastic. And I think more than we expected from him when he joined Forest from Newcastle.
Yeah, way more. I mean, I'm not sure if I agree with Jamie that he deserves legendary status just yet, but especially when you talk of him in the same breath as Brian Roy and Stan Collymore, the way and the style in which they scored their goals is probably on another level to the way Chris has scored them. But he's consistent. He keeps on scoring those goals, and he's a very, very important part of the team. You cannot deny that. And he has far exceeded my expectations, especially after seeing him play for the first few months in the Forest shirt. He looked like his best days were behind him, but fair play to him. He's looking in good shape now. He looks lean. He looks fit. And he's got that knack of just being in the right place at the right time. And as he showed on Monday night, just buying a ticket sometimes. You never know. Just got a bit of a hand from our old keeper, Dean Henderson there, but no, if you don't buy the ticket, you can't win the lottery. And he's an important member of the squad, and people outside of Nottingham are starting to talk about him as well now. So rather than being a figure of fun, he's been spoken about as one of the top strikers in the Premier League, which at this age I don't think he would have expected, and I know I certainly didn't.
What I really like about Chris Wood is that the way he plays, he is a proper old-fashioned centre forward in terms of his positioning. He always takes up really good positions in the penalty area, and if you can get the right service into him, more often than not, he'll score the goals. And then his goal on Monday was just a sign of a player who is confident, who's enjoying his football. He had a go from outside the box and caught out Dean Henderson, and that was the winning goal for Forest and a 1-0 victory. I'm really enjoying watching him play in a Forest shirt, the way that he brings others into play, and his ability to score goals and be in the right place at the right time, as you say. It's just a pleasure to watch a player in good form scoring plenty of goals.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, we struggled so much in that first season we were up to score the goals, especially when Taiwo was injured. And it used to be quite a stressful experience just watching Forest. So knowing you've got somebody in the team who's going to score a goal makes it a much more relaxing and enjoyable experience. I remember the days when we had Stan and Brian Roy, and then later on Kevin Campbell and Pierre Van Hooijdonk in the team. You just knew if one wasn't going to score, the other one was, and it just took the pressure off the whole occasion. You just knew you were going to either get a draw or win the game, and it feels a bit like that now. You don't feel like Forest are ever in danger of losing a match, really, and that shows with our form so far this season. So the only ones we've lost is Newcastle on penalties in the cup, and the day when everybody had an off day against Fulham. So. It's really, really good having him in the team at the moment.
And I'm just going to wrap up this segment by drawing attention to a great stat, which is that since December 2023, Chris Wood has the joint third highest amount of goals scored in the Premier League. He's only behind Erling Haaland, who has 23, and Cole Palmer, who has 22. Wood is joint third on 16 with Jean-Philippe Mateta of Crystal Palace. And that is some esteemed company to be in.
How do you feel great on vacation? Like really good? Easy. You go to Aruba. You'll spend your time relaxing on cool white sand beaches and floating in healing blue water. You'll immerse yourself in natural wonder and find your center on an island where things move at your speed. You won't just feel great, you'll feel relaxed, renewed, and ready for life. That's the Aruba effect. Plan your trip at Aruba.com.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to this week's Friday 5. It's Friday the 25th of October. Steven Toplis here, and I am joined again by the Maradona of the Midlands. And let's have a look at the next story that Jamie brought us. And it was Elliott Anderson's performance against Crystal Palace on Monday night. He's come into the side in place of Morgan Gibbs-White since he's been banned and also had an ongoing injury that he's recovering from. Elliott Anderson has stepped in. And he's caught the eye, hasn't he? He's put in some good, solid performances. And on Monday night in particular, his footwork and his drive through the Palace defence at times was really catching the eye.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't help but think of Gaza, or that little run he made in the first half when the ball was dancing in between his 2 feet and he was tricking his way past 2 or 3 of their defending players. It's just the comparison and obvious. A young guy from Newcastle, and he was sort of prime Gaza before he got injured for a few minutes at least. Anyway, and let's hope he can keep on showing that sort of form. It's if you've got the confidence to do that, it's very difficult to defend against, especially once you're in the box. You could see that nobody wants to stick a foot in and tackle him because they're terrified of giving away a penalty. But I've been very impressed with him ever since he's been for us. So again, the one game where I didn't think he was particularly good was the Fulham game, but then nobody was on that day. And I think he's always a little bit wasted when he's asked to play out wide, which he tends to have to do when Morgan Gibbs-White is fit. But yeah, certainly he's looking like a sound investment at the moment.
Yeah, and with every passing game, he looks like a really good acquisition for Forest. He's in form not only for the Reds, but also at international level, having scored recently for the England under-21s. And it's great to see another young player with plenty of potential coming to the City ground and starting to perform and show what he's capable of. And long may that continue. And the next story that Jamie brought us, and the final story of this week's Friday 5, is that Forest will be hosting a free open training session at the City Ground on Tuesday, the 29th of October. It's the first time since Forest returned to the Premier League and the first time since Evangelos Maranakis took ownership of the club that fans will have the opportunity to watch the first team squad train in person ahead of the West Ham game on the 2nd of November. It's been scheduled during the half-term school holidays, and it fits in with the vision of Evangelos Maranakis to develop the special relationship that the club has with its supporters. So Forest fans will have the chance to watch the players in action, but also hear directly from the coaching staff and players about their preparations. Our friend Mark Dennison will be there hosting the event, and he'll be having chats with Nuno and Captain Ryan Yates at the end of the session. The event is open to season card holders, My Forest members and club partners through a ballot. And this is quite a positive story, I think. It's nice to see the club reaching out, particularly in half-term week, to try and get youngsters through the door to watch their heroes up close training and get a bit closer to life at Nottingham Forest. What do you think?
Yeah, it's always fun when they do an open training session. It's especially when you're a kid. I'm a bit maybe. I'm not sure whether they should have just restricted it to season card holders and members and so on. It maybe would have been an ideal chance for those who can't get to the games normally, who maybe can't afford it or are on that lengthy waiting list and can't get a match ticket. Maybe it would have been a nice opportunity for them to go along and see the players in real life in a non-match situation. But if they're anticipating that the demand's going to be that high that they need to do a ballot, maybe it's just the practicalities of it meant that they couldn't let them in. I remember they had one in the past. I don't think it's quite so restrictive, but then maybe the demand wasn't so great in those days to go and watch the contemporaries train at the time. But yeah, no. Otherwise, it's always good. It's any sort of fan engagement like this where you can sort of be up close and personal with the players and sort of as a youngster. Youngsters were all sort of football geeks. We sort of any bit of information about the club or the players, so something like training, we gobble it up. So yeah, it'll be fun for everybody who attends, I'm sure.
Before we wrap up Friday 5, we'll take a quick look ahead to Forest's match tonight, in fact, away at Leicester City. Forest travel to the King Power off the back of their victory over Palace on Monday. And let's hope for a better experience this time around. The last time Forest were there was the season they got promoted to the Premier League, and they lost 4-0 to Brendan Rodgers' Leicester City on the night. Much has changed though since then, Maradona. So I'm looking forward to seeing Forest and how they get on at Leicester. I'm going to be there in the away end. But there's quite a few interesting points to this game, not just because it's Forest Leicester, but also because they have former Forest manager Steve Cooper in the dugout now. And that's going to be an interesting dynamics. It's the first time he'll have faced Forest since he left the club.
Yeah, it's going to be an odd atmosphere. I think a lot of Forest fans will want to sing his name just to show their appreciation, and never really got to say goodbye as such when he left. Might be a bit of trepidation for doing so because you don't want to be seen as a turncoat supporting the Leicester manager. So I'm hoping there's not too much aggro in the away fan section there, but I hope they can give him a good round of applause and maybe a Stevie Cooper just once at the beginning of the match, just to let our feelings be known. It might wind up the Leicester fans. It might be worthwhile singing it, Stevie Cooper, because they're not quite such big fans of him quite yet.
They're not, no.
No, but I remember they weren't such big fans of Martin O'Neill when he joined either. I remember, in fact, if we're quite topical, I remember a spitting incident involving fans towards Martin when he first joined there as well. He wasn't particularly popular right at the beginning. So they've got a bit of a track record for this sort of thing down the road at Leicester. They're not the most welcoming and friendly of people to ex-Forest people, it seems. But yeah, if he keeps on winning games there and win against Forest on Friday night would make him an instant hero, I guess. They wouldn't be able to complain too much about him then. But yeah, it's going to be hopefully a fun night for Forest. I'm looking forward to it too.
Yes, and hopefully Forest can return with all 3 points and carry on their winning form. We'll leave it there then. That brings us to an end to Friday 5 for this week. My thanks to Jamie Martin for providing us with the stories. Thanks to the Maradona of the Midlands for joining me, and thank you also, listener, for joining us. We will be back with you after the Leicester game with our match report. So until then, thanks for listening and goodbye.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.